Right. 4, 3, 2, 1. G'day fuckers. How are we? Welcome to the Croxton Park Front Bar tonight, where we're bringing to you Mastering Music, Mastering Life. I'm Tony Jack, the Bearmans. Thank you for joining us, and I'm very pleased tonight to have as my guest a guy who I have a fuck ton of respect for. He's a lovely fella. I don't get to see him that often, so today was just nothing more than just a good excuse to catch up and talk some shit. So without further ado, here's my man, Ezekiel Ox.
Thanks,
hey, mate.
I'm really well, Jack, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Good to have you here, bro. So, mate, did you umpire today?
I did. I umpired my first women's match. So I'd done female junior football or girls football, and today the VAFA, the Victorian Amateur Football Association's actually got a new push into the women's league, obviously on the back of the AFLW, and I umpired Theria Penola versus Hampton. Hampton got up comfortably, but yeah, it was really exciting. So I did Div 1 yesterday. I do the men on the Saturdays, and then I'm doing the women on the Sundays. So yeah.
What I find fascinating about you and umpiring is that because you're such a fucking intense fella, right?
But you got to be.
No. You're so intense, and to be an umpire, you got to be so fucking cool and level-headed. Like,
yeah.
This must be your leveler.
Well, I always said when I was 17, I'd umpired quite a bit of footy and senior footy in Geelong, and I was picked for the AFL Umpiring Academy. So at 17, I was running, 31, 32 minute, 10,000 metres, which is just outside of Commonwealth Games qualifying time. Very, very strong middle distance athlete, always have been. And I got selected, and obviously the pathway was there as a young man. By the time I was 23, 24, I probably would have been umpiring AFL football. I had a father who umpired 750 games of footy and was my coach. I had all these advantages and privileges, but then I got selected to go to the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts to study musical theatre, which had always been a passion of mine. And I said to Dad, I was weighing it up, as a young man, and I said, Dad, I think I'm gonna go with getting cheered for a living as opposed to booed for a living. Yeah. And I've stuck with that. Yeah. But the skill set of being a front person is different to being an umpire, but there are sort of certain things that run parallel. You've got to crave being in control at times. Very important that you can control the space, whatever it is. Yeah. Good verbal control, and an ability to make the right decisions under pressure quite often, and with a strict time frame. So I think they are suited. And a guy like Mick Jagger, he runs 10K a day on the treadmill. So it certainly helps with those energetic performances that I'm known for and that sort of thing.
I think a lot of people underestimate how fit AFL, VFL, just umpires in general are. Like you said, you're just running all fucking day. Yeah, and you've got to keep your wits about you while you're running as well. So it's not just the exertion, but you've got to be able to perform a task and bounce and throw and keep your mind active for the whole thing as well. So.
Yeah, it is good too, like you said. there is that element of it's almost like meditative. So when I'm umpiring, there's very little else you can think about. It's moment to moment. It's kind of Buddhist, it's kind of the now. Yeah. And then if you make a mistake, which I never have, amazingly, in my whole career as an umpire, then if you make a mistake, or you get it right, well, there's no point dwelling, because the next piece of play will be moved on, and so that gives you that ability to. It's a great thing for crushing anxiety and depression, because you get a physical task, which is good for your mental health as well. But on top of that, you have to act, and the synapses are firing in a way that's really healthy, which is, now. And so, it's sort of something that I went back to it just recently, because my father died. And so that, like I said before, he'd umpired a lot of games of footy, and I wanted a way to remember him. So when I'm running around, I can hear him, telling me that I'd stuffed that up or I got that right.
You had a good relationship with your dad, right?
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Like my father was, he's a remarkable man. I know most people would say that about their fathers, but my dad and I were a wonderful father and son combo, and shared a passion for lots of things. And Dad, the D's who just lost by 3 points to the Hawks. Shout out to Corey Blight, if you're watching, from Overreactor. He'll be very happy with the Hawks victory. And but yeah, look, also music. So when I was a kid, Dad would would pour through his vinyl collection, and then that vinyl collection. Dad was always on the forefront of technology as well. So, we had the Apple IIe when it came out, and then we'd get, the CD player the week it came out, and he was fascinated with he was a bit of an audiophile as well. So he never liked cassettes. He was always big on vinyl and CD, particularly when it came out. He liked the slightly more portable nature of CDs and stuff like that. So, but musically, Springsteen, Dylan, always the folk and the rock. So, well, I go to some friends' houses as a teenager, and their parents that have Pink Floyd, that have Led Zeppelin, the more psychedelics. And I thought to myself, getting older, those were the parents that were probably more predisposed to maybe smoking a joint, which is something my father never did. My parents were more in that folk circuit. So, Tiny Tim, James Taylor, Joan Armatrading, Patti Smith. So there's a bit of rock and roll in there. And
did you see when she recently came out?
I didn't see her this tour, but I saw her in '98 supporting Bob Dylan in Perth, and she was amazing. Like, it still blows my mind to think about that performance.
She's what, 70 now? She must be.
Yes. Yeah.
And everyone said she's just full on fucking energy, and she had a beautiful spirit about her, and just connected with the audience. She's just consummate performer.
She's amazing, and a woman who took time out of her career to pursue her goals as a woman by having children with, I think it was the bass player of the MC5 in the end. She moved to Detroit, and she decided that she'd take time out to do other things. And I got a lot of respect for that, So, and also a real inspiration for me in a very specific way, which was when MMML had a famous song, famous to some, called The Majority, which was as a young man, I love confrontation, I love controversy, and I wanted to use words that I wasn't allowed to use as a male and a white fella, and there's like if Public Enemy say nigger, it's a very different thing to Coldplay saying it, and so but then again, there's a way. So I wanted to use the words faggot, nigger, and bitch, which are obviously extremely offensive to women and gay people and to people of colour. And I put those words into a song, The Majority, that was based on Patti Smith's use of the term in her famous song Rock and Roll Nigger. So she was a real inspiration to me growing up, and to see her perform. And she walked out there and she puts her hands in the air, and I mean, it might sound like a very young perspective, but she had, full armpit hair, and she was androgynous. And as a young man, an 18-year-old, I just was like, who is this person? Like, is she a man? Is she a woman? And then she just started by holding a poem, and her drummer dropped into the drum beat from Not Fade Away by the Stones, dum, 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 dum. And then that was very good. We should start a band, man. We're in sync. And then she read this poem of like about the Vietnam veterans, because it was Vietnam Veterans Day, or Veterans Day in America.
Yep.
And it's just a jam, and this is at the entertainment centre in Perth. And she had that intimacy to be able to bring up she said, I wrote this in my hotel room this afternoon, And I thought, wow, what a phenomenal performer. And so, that's one part of it.
Yeah. So is that where your spoken word and beat poetry and stuff comes in? I mean, were you already exploring that shit beforehand?
I think the poetry comes from lyrics, because I was a huge Dylan fan. And then when I found hip hop, it's as much fun to read as it is to listen to in a lot of ways. And in some ways, depending on the quality of the rapper's voice, it can be better, But and then I also was lucky enough when I went to university, when I made that decision to not pursue umpiring but to pursue performing arts, I was lucky enough to study under Jennifer West, who's from the Royal Shakespeare Company in England, and Janice Taylor Warren from the Met Opera, and Julia Moody. These are people that just women that love poetry, and I did a whole linguistics and poetry course, and Shakespeare, doing Shakespeare for 12 months, really intensively, and obviously he wrote sonnets and poetry. And so we'd spend hours poring over, 4 lines and what it meant, how the metre worked. So discovering different forms, because the limerick is one form, and then you've got the sonnet, and you've got all these different forms of poetry, and so that sort of led me into the word, and then from there I felt like I had a bit to say and that I could probably hold an audience for a while. Yeah. And I saw some videos of Henry Rollins doing his stuff when I was a young man as well. And yeah, I just thought, it's another thing I could do. It's very challenging doing spoken word. Actually, Doug Bear's here tonight, who runs Rare Records, and I did my first spoken word shows at Doug's shop before he went online, as is the way now. And they were really successful. And I've done, I think I'm up to my 4th now. And I was saying to Maxine, my fiance, who's also here tonight, that I think it might be time to maybe do another one, and it'll probably be the tightest I do. But, I did a funny story about the poetry stuff was I got booked for Woodford Folk Festival, and I was stoked because Woodford's a great festival. And I got up there and I'm looking through the program. And it's this thick, and I'm thinking, where am I? And it's like there's no hip hop section. I'm looking there's a rock section, and I couldn't find myself. And then as we were looking at it, Maxine actually found me, and I realised that I'd been booked in the poetry / comedy section, right? Which to me confirmed. I actually took a photo of it and sent it to a few mates. I said, "See, I told you I was funny," because I got booked as a comedian, and so that's my claim. I'll add that to my resume now. Comedian, funny man, resident Woodford funny man. Yeah. But so that was a really interesting process because I'd come up there prepared with this full hip hop show, and then overnight in the tent we had to kind of redevelop it with my DJ to include him, but also make it more spoken word. It's poetry is so important, and it's making a comeback. I watched a great documentary last night by about a band called the Sleaford Mods that everyone should check out. They're a working class band from the UK, and they're killing it. They're selling out shows all around Europe, but they have deep connections to the activist scene, but they also have deep connections to the poetry scene, and also big shout out if anyone's watching from the Melbourne Spoken Word Collective, which is Ben Solar has really driven that, and that's been a really great sort of what's the word, like a light bulb if we are moths, to come towards, and it's been a great thing to come around, and that's building really strong stuff. He does like WrestleMania things with spoken word where people have to trade off, and but yeah, the Melbourne Spoken Word Collective, if you are in Melbourne, and then Jonathan Shree, who's just been elected as a Greens councillor in Brisbane, is also a great spoken word poet. So they're people you can contact if you're interested. If you've got a poem, get up there and say it, at this point.
So tell me, how did the whole activism, because for all the years I've known you, even before I'd seen you at any demonstrations or really actively doing it, again, if I go back to that MMML EP that I worked with you years ago, I thought, wow, there's a lot of stuff here about social conscience.
You must have nailed that too, because it sold however many, 15,000. You nailed it, Jack.
Oh, you nailed it.
Can't polish a turd.
People buy songs, dude. That's about the song. No one
that was when people actually bought songs. Yeah. That was when there was no Spotify. People actually bought music. Imagine that.
I don't know, it's interesting that one, because we talk about a previous model and like some kind of halcyon days existed where, because there was more physical money being exchanged for physical items over the counters, 30 odd years ago or whatever, artists still got fucked over, dude.
Yeah, of course. I was part of that with Full Scale.
And I think people seem to forget that the money was always made by the record companies.
Yes.
Artists didn't make jack shit unless you were Fleetwood Mac but again, in the overall pool of things, what percentage is that? That's 0.0.
Yeah, I think my analysis of that is that where it's gotten harder is for the mid tier. So it used to be you could go out and say if you could sell 30 CDs a night, 20 T-shirts plus your receipts, and that would be an income. And the people that would buy a CD, there's something tangible about having something in your hand, totally. and that would then, you get home, you take it out of your pocket, you think about it again, you put it in the car on the way home from the gig. People are less likely to do that now, and I think what I've noticed as a mid-tier artist and someone that's never really broken on through to that other side, to quote the great Jim Morrison, is that it's much at the 300 capacity level venue. It's much harder to make that extra bit on the merch, which is probably putting the fuel in your car and putting the profit in. So it's harder to pay your musos, it's harder to turn a profit. So I think things have gotten harder for the mid-tier bands. It's always been hard for the bands that are not producing pop music, or for the ones that aren't booking any. I mean, if you haven't got anyone coming to your shows, then you should think about why you're doing it. Yeah. And if you are doing it just to do it.
Not even why you're doing it, but what are you offering?
Yeah, and how you can improve.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's ultimately it's about what value you bring to the, again, you've got to ask yourself, why would I want to come and see me play?
Yes, yeah.
And it's probably a hard question to answer for yourself, but you've got to be honest about it.
Not for me. Fuck, it's easy.
Well, for you it's easy. You're let's put you out of the equation, cunt. We're talking about the rest of me and more.
You just call me a cunt on the internet?
I did. In terms of endearment.
Just going to call my lawyer. No.
Get on to it,
I wish I had one.
You said you wanted controversy. I was inviting you.
It's not controversy, it's abuse. No, but I think that we're heading to an age where, at least the first thing I ever bought, let's go back to that. How did I buy music? The first thing I ever bought as a piece of music with my own pocket money was Madonna's Like a Prayer.
Nice.
On vinyl,
yep.
A-side, B-side. And that was obviously a great song, still is, but that was when I started spending, and that was, I can't remember, it was $3.50 or something, right? Now, the difference now is that if I hear a new artist or I hear of a new artist, I go straight to Spotify. And as I know as an artist, you're getting, 0.0000, and it's repeating.
Yeah.
So it's nothing, So, and I think that discovery stage where you can trip it over the edge. Because I was here the other night, we're at the Croxton in the front bar, but I was here in the back room the other night watching Cog. Now, a band like that, if you can sell 800 tickets, then unless you've got a really shit business manager, you're probably going to be able to do okay. Yeah. But it's that ability to build and that ability to have thing in your hand, and that's the same thing as why Kindles haven't down bookshops and why record stores, when they're well run, are still surviving.
Yeah, well, look what happened. We had a record store day the other day. I mean, how healthy was that? Great turnout.
Yeah.
Good to see lots of stores running, including Dougie. Yeah.
But I think Neil Young got it really right in his autobiography, which is called Waging Heavy Peace, which is a great read, where he started this Pono thing. It's
the high res thing.
Yeah, it's like it's lossless, lossless files, and he said in it, well, he sees it as a greatness, in society when we start accepting MP3. And it's a really controversial comment, because people are like, oh, it's fucking great. You can email them around and, you can share them with your mate. That's one thing, is accessibility is, of course, important. But, when you're talking literally about an art form that is going to, elevate and spark synapses and blow minds, that's what music does. Like we all remember the first time we saw Pink Floyd's, live at Pompeii, or the first time we saw a live band that blew us away. I still remember watching Weddings, Parties, Anything as a 12-year-old, and like those moments were on record are being lost. And as a mastering engineer, you're doing, I'm sure, more vinyl now, which is really positive because people are coming back to that, because it is more lost. It's quite a range,
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I think it's the tactile experience of playing it. Like it's funny when I speak to kids who I mentor and they look at me with their mouths open. I'd say to them, primary entertainment for us in the 70s was going to record with the lunch money that you didn't buy your fucking lunch money with, and buy a bit of vinyl, and you'd sit around each other's houses and go to the ritual playing a CD, and maybe we were smoking a joint, but not much was said, and we actually were sitting engaged and listening to the album and those look at you like, what the fuck's that about? Whereas it's all changed now. Whereas the thing is that we had hi-fis, we had stereos, we had different ways of consuming music. Whereas nowadays it's become such a portable thing.
Have you ever been to a fucking party? And you end up standing around the kitchen. You walk into the kitchen, and you end up there's two people sitting there like this, and you think to yourself, like, is that actually the way to experience music? Oh, I've got this great new track, and people are sitting there listening, and they judge it. People will go, oh, that's shit.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, you haven't even heard it. You've lost this much range, and I think
I think most people.
A good stereo, but there's a meme on Facebook. You know, you spend $30,000 recording it, you spend you know, $6,000 mixing it, you spend, you know, $5,000 mastering it, then you spend you know, all this money, and then it gets listened to on an MP3 on a set of $2 headphones.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if people could think more about how they're experiencing music, Gil Scott-Heron, the great late Gil Scott-Heron, a poet, who I'm a huge fan of, he released his last album, and it had this huge liner notes, and it was this description, this 500 words on why you should follow his instructions and sit down, turn everything off, the microwave, and sit in a room in darkness and listen to this record, or don't listen to it at all, was what he was saying. And I think that we take, but you know, you can blame listeners, or you can blame a busy world. You can blame, of course, people are going to want something for free when they've got nothing. We've just seen penalty rates cut. You know, everyone's got less. And that's problematic, because we should be trying to get each other more, because people, what we know is that when working class people get more money, they spend it, and when ruling class people get more money, they keep it for themselves. Yeah. And so we need to get the whole system sorted out, so that then people understand the value, because it's like almost people know the cost of everything now, but the value of nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and that really worries me. You know.
Yeah. No, I hear
you. You were going to say something about the activism, though, because you were saying how you mastered Mammal, which we should go back to.
Anyway, no. So I was saying, so going back to that EP.
You don't have to. I was just, because it seemed like we'd reached a brief.
That's okay. Look, this is the beautiful thing about these chats, mate. They just go fucking all over the shop. They don't have to follow any form whatsoever. But I remembered back then how just listening to that EP lyrically, like, wow, this is some shit. There's some surreal social consciousness about it. So I never asked you this. I've known you all these years. I've never asked the question. So, was there a pivotal moment in your life, or was there a process, or what actually took you to the point where, you know, because pissing and moaning about it is something, is one thing, but actually doing something about it or trying to bring a solution is another. So how did this all come about for you, mate? Like because you're intensely passionate about it, which is fantastic. So was a turning point in your life, or?
Yeah, I think, well, I was raised that way. So my parents were strong union people, and we'd get pulled out of school if teachers were striking, so that we didn't, you know, indulge scab labour, which they're trying to outlaw the word scab now. Like it's like language is losing all its fucking meaning. And so as a child, I was marching in Reclaim the Night rallies. My first argument, I remember, was with my mother. My first argument about politics, because of course you're a child, so you just go with what your parents say. Yeah. That's left or right. But Mum, there was a Reclaim the Night rally, and in the Reclaim the Night marches, the men march up the back, and I was 12. So it's that, you know, you're at that point where you're like, you know, you're clearly still a child, but you're trying to, you know, become a man. And I said to Mum, well, why do I have to march up the back? Because I want to march with my mum, you know, for women's rights. And Mum said, well, because you're 12, you can march wherever you want. But the reason is because of you know, because women want to be up the front. And it was a very brief argument, of course, because my mother owned me on it. But I was saying, why can't we all just march together? And then we had our first discussion about, you know, women's spaces, and you know, any space for any group of people. So from there, what happened was in '94, and it's a very interesting point, because in '94, Pauline Hanson won a seat in the lower house of federal parliament, or I can't remember if it was '93 or '94, but around that time, it was '94. We were fighting in Geelong, and she decided, you know, that she was going to bring her, you know, crypto-fascist, you know, rhetoric to Geelong. Of course, they attacked the regionals, you know, because the cities are a bit smart for that. And so we all went down to Geelong West Town Hall, and I still remember we turned up. There was 50 of them and 1,500 of us. So we stormed their meeting, shut it down so they couldn't form a core because they couldn't get a party going in Geelong, which is a very successful act of direct action. But at that rally, I saw my first neo-Nazi, and there was 6 of them. You know, they probably came from all over the state, and they had the skinheads and the swastika tattoos, and they were waving a swastika flag, and they were doing the salute. And I just thought, as a child, a 14-year-old, I just thought, fuck, like this is here in front of me, and these people still exist, and of course they tack on to Pauline Hanson's rhetoric about, you know, Asians swamping the country, and, you know, gay people getting too much, and all that crap that they do. Yeah. So I became extraordinarily radicalised at 14 or 15 by the direct and very successful actions in Geelong to stop One Nation forming, because it was successful and they never got a foothold, and it was because we kept the pressure up. And then from there, I just carried that on. And whilst you say I'm very passionate about it, there's a lot of people out there that are really passionate about it, and I think I use my skill set to make myself a very present and vocal person in the scene. But you know, within any circuit, in any victory, you're going to have diplomats, warriors, you know, planners, organisers, cooks. You know, someone's got to do the plumbing, and this is who we are. And if you ask, you know, if you break it down away from what's going on, look at the refugee stuff. You know, we're getting 15,000, 10,000 out on the streets in Melbourne. That's something that cuts to people very clearly. Yeah. You know, the children in detention, it's child abuse. They're basic things. So we get described as the radicals, but really Bernardi, Abbott, you know, Turnbull's just a wanker. He's just an ineffective wanker. But the far right, you know, your sort of Brandises and your Hansons, these people, they're the radicals. They're the ones saying, let's be crueler. Yeah. Let's cut services. Let's cut education. Let's cut pensions. Let's make it harder on old people, disabled people. That to me is an extraordinarily radical perspective to have. When you talk about where we're at as human beings and what we've learnt, like we're more educated than we ever have been. The least directly violent society we've ever lived in.
The one thing I've never understood is that,
and they're trying to mainstream themselves.
The one thing I never could still it fucks with me sometimes, and I think as a species, the last 200 years we've exponentially just grown so much technologically. The shit we can do now, especially in the last 250 years.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Here we are.
You know, I mean, we're fucking having a conversation in real time that's going fucking up into the ether and the satellites, and
I know.
It's. I mean, wrap your head around that. But yet we still want to fuck each other over. We still want to kill each other. There's still so much fear out there.
I would argue that, Jack, and I understand the point, and it's a salient point, but I would argue that if you look at the response to the Iraq War in 2003, and if you look at the response to Abbott saying that they were going to cut health, education, the ABC, right?
No doubt.
What happened? And that says that you're saying we're out there killing each other. No, they're killing each other. They're sending us to kill each other. Yeah. There's still a lot of people that have decency at the core, and we need to sort of wrestle back the narrative that we're not radical. We're just asking for some common sense, you know, a chance to live. You know, I mean, if you're gonna cut funding to disabilities, you're an asshole. There's no economic argument. There's no rationalisation for that. You're going to cut old people's pensions. You're an asshole. That's what it used to be. Not, well, times are tough. It's like, no, fuck you. They're old. Give them a go. You know. And yes, the young people can pick up the slack. But this whole concept that all of a sudden unemployed people, disabled people are the problem. That it's a sickness. It's a psychotic. You know, those people are the kind of people that would be unwelcome at people's parties. I don't care who they are. Whether they might vote Liberal people, but there's a difference between. So I think that we need to keep a hold of our humanity and know that we're not doing it to each other. We actually want better. And that every struggle. So I just want to make one point. To say that we want the worst for each other, it flies in the face of every progression. It flies in the face of the vote to make Aboriginal citizens, the push for gay marriage. You know, these are hard-won victories by us, not them.
Sure. Well, I guess maybe I wasn't making my point clear. And that is that we just, as a society, I don't think the people that will stand up and fundamentally we're decent to the core, but if you look at the growth of technology and the growth of how we've evolved, I just don't think they're in step. That's all.
No, it's too quick, you think, the curve. It's like...
The technological curve is, it's been great. I mean, I've got no problem with advances in technology, but I'm just saying that yet still we just seem to keep fucking up. You know, and it's not to say that people aren't good and that people don't go out there and fundamentally, all the things you say I completely agree with. But to me, I would have thought that a species that can come up and create creative solutions for so many other things still can't find creative solutions for world hunger, still can't find solutions for, you know, the issues with refugees, the issues with war, the issues with famine, the issues with, social injustice in the world, the issues with, gay rights. You just go through the whole list. So we can work out solutions to problems, a bit of computer software to do this, which is amazing and does incredible things, but yet we haven't been able to still come up with solutions.
Well, there's one solution, that's revolution. It's got to be, and there's no other way. So I feel like, the system's broken.
How do you see the revolution?
It'll never work.
How do you see the revolution? I mean, what's your vision?
It's an impossible question to answer. But I think, it would be born. Well, women would be up front. Women would lead because they've got the best ideas because they're naturally predisposed to being the most oppressed group on the planet. John Lennon said, "Woman is the nigger of the world." Yep. I agree with that. And you have to look at where the feminine voice is at the moment and how that's leading things, because that'll lead to better care for children generally. Mm. It'll lead to less war. Women are always up the front of anti-war movements. But I think that the thing is that we're at a point where they'll constantly take things from you to make you scared. And it's understandable that people will get stressed out. But I can't quite answer that question except to say that it's the time has come for you certainly. Well, let me put it this way: the consequences for you will be clear in your actions. But if you choose non-compliance and if you choose to say no to a system that is unjust, then I stand with you. If you do that, so at some point we're going to have to say no. Sure. We're going to have to say no. We're not going to deport that refugee. We're not going to accept that. We have to have a civil conversation. Like there's an adult sort of conversation that needs to be had. If a child is saying, "I want the toy, I want all the toys," that's an easy conversation. You don't get all the toys. There's other kids, and that's what they're saying. That's literally all they've got to say to us.
Well, for a lot of people, if you look at any issue that's very divisive, that's the issue with look at politics, religion, what have you. And I think someone at some stage has to not necessarily say I'm wrong, but at least be open to the idea that they might be wrong.
You have to be in politics.
Yeah,
you have to be.
I think with anything, and I think we're so caught up in this anything that's very. So what I'm trying to find, there's a battle going on. Adversarial kind of thing going on. You think about how it's all about just being right for the sake of being right, because you're so far. Particularly if you're talking about millions of people who died in your cause or whatever, it's gone so far over the edge now that it's almost like we can't turn back because our egos won't allow us, because for our fallen brothers and sisters and whatnot, and for generations and what have you. But at some point, someone's got to stop and just kind of either just be prepared to walk away from it.
I will finish by saying that not only women but First Nations people need to lead. I think if we got to a point where all we did was listen to women and First Nations people for 5 years, we would probably find ourselves in a better spot, because the First Nations.
Well, think about it, mate. I mean, how many? I mean, again, I don't know the exact numbers. You're probably better versed than I am. But so before white settlement invasion, whichever way you want to put it, mate.
I don't know which way I put it.
But before
the Frontier Wars. Before the Frontier Wars.
Well, yeah. So how many thousands of millions of years were the Indigenous people?
They reckon it's been 40 and 80,000.
Okay,
guaranteed.
All right. So they managed to. All right. So basically, here's a mob who managed to fucking live with the land for how many fucking thousands of years. Keep it in balance, keep it in check. Everything's fucking really well, and now we find a situation where we're just so out of balance. So I think you're right. I think generally in society we've lost that touch with nature, man.
Yes,
we've lost that touch with nature. We're just completely at odds with her. And
we are nature.
Well,
we something we forget. Because we're so good at controlling it with every dam, with every sunscreen, with anything we do to naturally to use science to control things. We've come to understand ourselves as being somehow outside of it, but we are literally
a
natural occurrence. We pop up and then we can go just as quick. But I think that once you accept yourself as part of nature, breathing that air, Maxine and I were watching something the other day, and someone said about it was a film, it was a fictional film, but an astronaut was saying goodbye to his wife in space. What movie was it? It was it was like Armageddon, or it was rubbish. It was rubbish. It was good. Right, okay. It was good though, It was rubbish, but it was good.
Yeah.
Deep Impact.
It was Deep Impact. And he was saying goodbye to his wife, and he said, when you give birth to our baby, it will come into the Earth's atmosphere for the first time. And I was like, yeah, that's actually really cool. Like the idea that you kind of that's the first time you touch the atmosphere, because it's a natural thing. It's like there's this thing going on, but I don't know. There's a new fight coming, and we're all going to find it. And so you know, for me, you know, you don't have to listen to the police. You don't have to listen to politicians. You know, you may choose to listen to the police because it suits you to comply. Like, people have different methods with all sorts of things, and I'm not going to judge anyone, but it's at a point where you can take a moral stand, and when those that are in charge, when the lunatics are running the asylum, it can become important to actually put your hand up and go, actually, there's another way.
Have you seen those videos? Those guys get pulled over by the traffic police, and they're saying, "Look, I'm
sovereign citizens."
Sovereigns, yeah. And when they just take these cops to task, it's really quite interesting to watch some of these videos. You know, it really is.
It's interesting seeing the sovereign citizen scene. I'm not 100% convinced. I think that it's like saying, oh, okay, I decided I'm a sovereign citizen, so therefore I now have nothing more to do. No, I'm done. A revolution complete inside me, I know. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, women still can't get abortions and gay people can't get married. And they go, well, it doesn't matter because I'm a sovereign citizen. It's like, you know, you're a part of it. I mean, I feel intrinsically linked to my society, and I like that. And all the hate, all the shame, all the hurt, you know, all the joy. So I think you're better off joining it and fighting, you know, for what you believe in, you know. And I'm part of the warrior class, but, you know, I find those people that, you know, they tend to sit there and go, if only you'd understand. It's like, talk to the single mother sleeping in a car. She understands. She understands what capitalism's doing to her.
You know, it's interesting. Everyone's subjective. Everyone's view of reality is subjective, and that's the thing. And again, you know, like you said, it's always a matter of if everyone took the time to be able to go and look at everyone else's perspective. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be right or wrong, but as I said, sometimes we can get so blinkered in, and that's not to say that our position cannot be justified, but it's always we justify to ourselves, don't we? Always manage to justify to ourselves. But, you know, I've become really fascinated as I've become a bit older and a little bit more chilled, shall we say, all right, for example, I see a nationalist, a white, a neo-Nazi, whatever, and he's hating on Muslims, and my initial thought is, okay, that's really disgusting, because I'm right in the heart of fucking Muslim town, dude, and I love them.
Same, I live in Coburg.
Yeah, I love them, right? But then after the initial goes down, then my next question is, okay, what happened to you? What happened to you for you to get? Do you know what I mean?
I'm glad there's people like you.
Yeah, because I'm interested to know, because it's like no one was born racist, no one was born a bigot.
No.
That's.
No, I've never held a newborn baby and they've looked up at me and gone,
"You're a cunt."
Yeah, you know, like
right.
It's so true. It's so true.
You know. So I mean, what are babies? They're
sponges.
They're unconditional love, aren't they?
Yes.
They're absolute unconditional love. So, and that gets, you know, beaten out of us. That's another, you know, conversation for another day. But again, and it's not because I'm looking to understand to help sympathise with.
What you're saying, you just
it's a curiosity. It's a curiosity. So it's like, okay, well, you're a product of your environment and your upbringing and whatever. So what happened to you, dude?
And I would say that can be an interesting conversation if you're talking about the rank and file, say, white nationalists. But it comes down to the same understanding of class politics, because within those organisations, the same as
do we need classes though? Do we need classes?
Let me put it this way: like, if you look at let's say they've got an organisational group that are actually organising to have the Fourth Reich, you know, and then you've got you've got groups of people under them. The groups of people under them are like, what I'm saying is that yes, there may be people led to a white nationalist movement who are possibly damaged and could, you know, sad people. The problem is that when politics isn't about ideology. Your ideology is important, but politics is about force and numbers. And this is probably some brutal truth for some people out there. But if you think, oh, I voted Green, well, it doesn't matter because they've got one seat in federal parliament. So good on you. And yes, you agree with but it doesn't mean you have any political force because they're on the news. So if the problem is that when the leadership of white nationalist groups or the leadership of left-wing groups can gain control, we're going to see different outcomes politically. So don't be naive and think that taking a walk around the block for refugees is going to fix it. The question has to be, who is seeking power? Who is going to gain power? How are they going to achieve that? And how do we influence those things. Of course, we want power. When I say we, I mean when I say me, I want we. I want refugee activists to have more power. I want gay rights activists to have more power. Of course I do. But that's not a fait accompli because we think we're right, as you said. Because some people don't think we're right. So then you start getting down to the nitty gritty: who controls the street, who controls the police, who controls the state, who controls legislation. And these are the issues we're grappling with when we're talking about the search for power. And there's no power without glory. Sure, you've got to be right. But if those neo-Nazi rallies that have 20 people at them, if that becomes 2,000, we've got a massive problem. And that's not because they're wrong or they're right. It's because their ideology is to beat the shit out of people that are different to them. Whereas refugee rallies are going to march around the block, no one's going to get hurt. So I think we have to be very careful when we say who's right and wrong. If we could just take it be a bit more adult about it and say, who's got the power? Yeah. Who's got the power, and who do you want to have the power? Yeah. And then what
people don't think that way because when you're talking about highly emotive issues, logic and rationale goes out the fucking window. So these are good questions that you ask, but a lot of people don't sit and ponder that stuff for them, you know, because they're so incensed at whatever they're seeing, and no doubt rightly so with what they see. So people just react, you know, rather than sit back and just take a step back and go, okay, well, not to be in denial of what's going on, but again, just to try and look at, you know, how do we get to the cause of things rather than just trying to fix the symptoms or just react to the, you know, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like let's just go deeper on the issue and see, you know, again, let's find out what's caused this and let's get to the root of the problem as opposed to just the symptoms all the time. Yeah. You know, so
well, you can see what's happening.
Maybe I'm very fucking naive, Mr. Ezekiel Ox.
No, I don't think you're naive. I think what you just said is very interesting. What is the cause of this? Yeah. Well, my analysis of that is after 25 years of post-Howard refugee bashing, children overboard, complete lie. Muslim people don't throw their children in the water. That's a racist lie. Then you've got the intervention in the Northern Territory. Then you've got the forced closure of communities in the Kimberley. Look at these racist policies that are affecting Muslims and Aboriginal people. So then what happens? Oh shit, you get an uprising in white nationalism. It's not a vacuum. It's because racism and homophobia has been mainstreamed in a way that means that all of a sudden the hardest of the hard, can then feel emboldened to walk out in the street and go, I'm white, I deserve to run. It's not. It didn't happen because they thought it was a good idea today. They've always thought it was a good idea. It's just like we always thought the other thing was a good idea. But you slowly start rolling back conditions. You start rolling back the narrative. All of a sudden people start saying things like, hey man, have a listen to John Howard. He's got a point. What's his point? Abuse children? Lock up refugees? And then he gets 5 minutes on the news to argue it. No one should just turn him off. You should just go, well, that's not human. That's not compassion. You go back to school, mate. Like you said, you learn about what your problem is. But that's not what happens. So we've had this legitimisation of hard right attitudes, which then leads to a violent, aggressive force on the street. So I see it as a really important question. How did we get here? And then what is to be done are the questions always.
Again, that's just for my curiosity, and I don't know if there's a simple answer to it. It's really complex, but it's again just trying to.
I wish we could solve it tonight.
You know, but maybe we will.
No, I don't think so, Jack. No offence.
No, well,
maybe we're a small part of solving it tonight. Maybe it's a snowball.
Well, everything is about dialogue, talking about it, having honest, open discussion, and again, but coming to a table of discussion where you have a mindset of being, while everyone's got their own bias through conditioning and what have you, is still to be able to come to a discussion with a willingness. Yeah, a willingness to at least be open enough to say, well, I'm prepared for now. I'm gonna walk in your stilettos, for a couple of miles, and see how your feet hurt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I'm not a social fucking scientist. My qualification in life is dick.
No, you're a music master. You're a damn fine one.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Thank you. But and I lost my trail of fucking thought there, mate.
Start a new one. What do you think? Do you know what I want to talk about?
Go on, talk about.
Let's move on.
What do you want to talk about?
I reckon.
Talk about super high. Come on.
Okay, yeah, I can talk about that. But I have another thing. Okay, so I've got 4 projects at the moment. The Super Heist is about to go on tour. We're playing here at the Croxton on June 16. You can check out all the dates at superheist.com.au. But Super Heist has been really good because what happened was we came out with this new album last year, and a year before last year, let's say, D.W. Norton called me up out of the blue, completely out of the blue. I don't even know how he got my number. And he said, "Oh, Zeke, I want to talk to you at my bar." And I'd DJ'd at Whole Lot of Love. And I was like, okay. And so I went down, and he said, "I want to get Super Heist back together, and I think you should be the singer." And I thought, I actually reckon that's a really fucking good idea. But I didn't have the time at the time because I was doing the solo thing and Overreactor really hardcore at the time. And so then once he called me back again, and about a year later, and I had the time. So we went for it, and we wrote this really great album, Goes to the Social Dead, and we recorded it over in LA, and I managed to pull Jay in to produce. He produced the full-scale album. So it was, I mean, the thing, as I said to Richie at the first meeting, or DW at the first meeting, it was never cool, Super Heist. And I know Richie's heard me say that before. And when I say that, I mean it was successful. I mean, it was big day outs. It was top 20 albums. It was everything you'd want from a band. But it was never the cool band. And I liked that. I liked the fact they were going to bring new metal back, because I've always been a bit of a new metal aficionado. Yep. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. And I thought it was right. So we did that, and it went very well. And so now we just released a new AAA side, Raise Hell, and we're working on this new tour. So, but it really, for me, it's just DW and I, our writing relationship's really strong. And we've now sort of got the band to a point. We've got Cy Durant from In Extremis, a very big Adelaide band, is playing bass. John Sankey from Devil You Know in the States, and he's also been a drummer with Fear Factory. He's playing drums for us. And we've got a guy, Keir Gotcha, who was actually in Snot, which is a really, I mean, for those that don't know, Snot were a very seminal new metal band. And so we've got this lineup that's befitting the name, I think, and we're just in the process of redefining it. We've got 8-string guitars for the nerds out there. So Super Heist is very good. It's very family, because me and DW both have sons who are 7. So that's been really exciting to see them get together.
It's interesting watching your relationship with your son, because one thing I've been really, and I've said this to you before and I'll say it again, like I've always just admired your ability to be a good dad, because that's something sometimes so do I. Yeah, but because I struggle with it. In my early days,
Jack,
most people do. But
Jack, we're talking about Facebook here.
Yeah,
of course I look like a good dad.
No, but of course you do, but you know what I mean. You do, dude. No, you do. I can read. I can read behind the fucking.
I think I'm a good
mate.
Parent.
You know, I may look like a dumb cunt, but I'm not quite that dumb, right? So. But I mean, but again, I mean, you've had a good relationship with your dad. But I guess I've always had admiration for dads who have, particularly the ones who have been able to put time in their kids, especially in the early years. You know, I've got a cousin, the same sort of thing. His name's George. Shout out to George. He's got these 2 little kids, and it's a joy to see this guy who's able to really get on the level of these kids, and he's involved, he's active. And that's something I never got to do with mine. Yeah. You know, so for me, when I see people able to do that, and I'm not saying it's perfect, it's not easy,
of course not.
But there's a lot of cunt dads out there, right? Just complete fucking asshole shit fucking dads, unfortunately. And that's you're talking about women. I mean, why is it that we have so many single mothers? You know, because dads, for whatever reason, all right, if you're dead, you can't do anything about your kid, you're deceased. But unfortunately, and going through my divorce, and I've seen it, there are some real shit cunt dads out there, sadly to say.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like
shit cunt mums too.
Parenting. Yeah, but parenting. I was going to say parenting. Yeah, because you have 2 parents in a situation. You know, like you said, unless one's dead.
Ideally.
No, unless one's dead, there's 2 parents, whether they fail in it or they succeed in it. And you know, the core element has to be that you put the kids first, of course. And you know, I've tried to do that with Griffin. And I also feel that it's very important to seek, as you said, time with your child early in their life, 0 to 6, because those times are very important for the cuddles and the knowledge of where your shoulder is and how you feel, and your sense of safety when you're most vulnerable. They go to school, they start branching out, you know, and you know, I think it's really important. The big thing all I can say about parenting is, you know, if you say you're gonna do it, do it. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a chocolate frog after dinner, or whether it's, if you say that, I will send you to your room. It doesn't matter which it is, whether it's a disciplinary thing or if it's a positive thing. I'll take you to Luna Park, or I'll be there at 12, or I'll definitely see you for your birthday, or I'll call you on your this day. Whatever those things you promise, keep your promises to your kids, because they are full of love, and they will forgive a lot of your errors, and all parents will make them. But the one thing that will really show them, whatever your capacity is, whether you might be struggling with something in your life, which means you can't be there, but when you say you'll go every time, whatever it is, just 100%, and children will accept that. I've got I'm not really in a position to talk about my situation in much more detail, because
that's okay.
Because I have it's a very complicated emotional issue for me, and I love my son, of course, but probably the hardest part of being a parent has been when Griffin met Maxine, his stepmom, and he was a D's supporter, Griffin. And then he met Max, and he said, he fell in love with Max, as everyone who meets Max does. And he said, Dad, I don't bag for the D's anymore, I bag for the Bombers now. That's the hardest thing I've ever had to go through as a parent, and probably the hardest thing I ever will go through. Because they obviously, all you have to do as a D supporter is cast your mind back to the year 2000 grand final. Then your son converts, and it's just heaping pain upon pain, And I don't know. You deal with that. You move on. Bought him the jumper. He's just got his stepmom's just donated his Bombers scarf because she got a new one. So this is what we do.
Football and tribalism. It's amazing, isn't it?
But we got him last week. Can't talk about it anymore because the Hawks beat us this week. Shit. I think it's one of the things that I've been talking to people about the parenting thing. If we talk broadly about separating it from personal issues, and is that the only thing I'd say is that there's generally with children, there's a parent that sees if the parents are separated, there's a parent that sees the children more than the other. And let's say for clarity's sake that's the primary carer and the secondary carer, which is the normal terminology in the system. There's a lot of weight put on how difficult it is, and fair enough, for the primary carer to look after a kid by themselves. And that's more than reasonable. It is very difficult. What I'd like to see, and I don't think there should be any less focus put on those issues for the primary carer, but what I'd like to see is a more clearer focus, and I'm not gendering it. I'm not saying man or woman or father or mother. I'm saying secondary carers, and there are men and women out there doing that. It's a huge burden to bear if you are a diligent parent, and if you want to be with your child more, and for whatever circumstances you can't be, it's very important that those people have support, because you're often left alone and you're often left paying, and which is fine, of course, child support, of course, but the problems, the mental health issues that can arise from that,
totally,
and the loneliness and the sense of alienation that can come from what it is that your core is, which is I just want to be with my kids. Even once you've accepted it as a primary carer, a secondary carer, we should be putting more focus on that, because there's a lot of, what about the person who's with the kid? Whereas I've always felt that if you get to spend the majority of your time with a child post-separation, I would see that as awesome. I would see that as the goal.
Yeah.
And whatever struggle comes from that financially or whatever it is just a peripheral thing to the fact that you get to watch them grow. And so it's really important to maintain that contact. And I'd like to see more support, because, we've got a few, but they generally turn to that MRA, men's rights activist thing, which can get a bit ugly, which is, women taking their kids. Right. It's like, well, actually, the court system's set up reasonably at the moment, and the social services are set up reasonably at the moment to support, shared care. And so I think if you keep your head screwed on right, but at the same time I acknowledge that if you can't be with your children as much as you'd like, and if you're spending a substantially amount less, it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and it's really hard to work and just keep yourself.
I think it forces you to have more quality time. My kids are grown up. I've got one 10-year-old, and
isn't one of your kids here tonight?
Yep. She's around.
She's not even watching.
No.
She's watching on 2 phones.
She's
actually like...
She's watching twice as much as anyone else.
Yeah, that's it. She's
kids these days.
And she watches quicker than anyone too. That's it. She's been able to watch 90-minute shows in like 30 minutes.
She's live tweeting the Facebook Live status. Yeah, but I think, so...
But hang on, before I was just going to say that, but I found that I've actually been able to have more quality time, than what I did with my kids under the same fucking roof, Ezekiel Ox.
Yeah,
so, and look, I hear what you're saying, but I think if you can make it quality... I
reckon honestly we're at a stage it's going to work itself out. It's frontier parenting. Like when Rosa Parks sat at the front of the bus, things changed, and they're getting progressively better. When women won the right to a single parent's pension and the right to a no-fault divorce, things changed for a lot of abusive men, frankly, because women could leave, and that's a positive, and it should be celebrated as that. But no, I don't mean to put a but on that, but there's not a but on that. That's fantastic, but we are frontier parents. We are literally the separated parenting that's going on and the shared care. We're at the very front of it, and if you're part of it, my generation who are doing separated parenting, and a lot of my friends are. It's not just me. It's plenty of exactly. I reckon the next 50 years are going to be really definitive because where more and more people are taking responsibility, and more people, and we're seeing more and more data being collected really about, given the opportunity, will secondary carers step up? And what we're seeing is yes. Time and time again, we're seeing people, whether it be because they had an issue before with something, they fix it, because the people put their kids first. So I can't wait to see a world where the kids are just put first. Isn't it funny, though, that we live in a world where people are putting children second in their personal relationships while we've had children locked up in detention centres? So isn't this is the chicken or egg stuff, or not chicken or egg, but the cause and effect of saying no. So, some children can just fuck off and die, and we don't care, lose their whole childhoods in prison for no crime. And then we have people thinking that it's all about them. Well, of course it's all about them, because they think that it's about making more money or, hating on that person. So I think once we solve the social problems, we'll start to see, because children are golden. They have to be.
Of course
well, it's like Whitney Houston said.
Yeah.
I believe the children are our future.
Yeah.
Vision well in. Let them lead the way.
Do a cover of that one, mate.
Show more beauty than the heavens high.
So when's your next shows now? You got Cherry Bar?
Okay, yeah, I've got to be coming up. Let's do some promo. Like I've got Cherry Bar June 2nd.
Yep.
With my solo band. This is the solo logo. I'd like to thank Jackson Fish from FIFO Screen Printing for the T-shirt. Thank you, Jackson. And he's playing down the road at what is it called? Targo Margo? Or whatever. Targo Margo. Just down the road tonight. So if you're watching this and you're local, you're in the north side of Melbourne, please pop down. I'll be there, so you can come up to me and say, Zeke, I totally disagree with you on that. And I'll go, hey man, that was when I was talking to Jack. I don't give a shit. No, I won't say that. So Jackson Fish at FIFO has printed this T-shirt, but this is my new logo, and we've got a great band, Lee Davies from Sleep Parade, and the Occupants, and he just did a tour with Dead Letter Circus. He's my guitar player. Sarox Martin, who's from Cloud City, and amazing bass player. She's phenomenal, and a great vocalist in her own right. And then Stephen Smith, who plays drums for Briggs, who you've had on your podcast.
Yep.
How
good is he going?
More power to Briggs.
How good is he fucking going, that dude, man? Fuck,
yeah. Integrity, and and that's the thing. That's such an important voice right now with what I was saying before about First Nations people. That a track like Bad Apples, which says to people, hey, you know what? Like, this is who we are, and fuck you, because I love them. My sisters, my brothers, my cousins. I'm not gonna say that we're the problem. We're us. Yeah. We're getting by. We're surviving. These kids are surviving better than many would, and I reckon Briggs' pride in his people. He's a Yorta man, and he says that proudly. He's got it tatted on his arms in case you miss it when he's holding his mic. And the work he's done with giving people a vision into what is it like? What would you call it? Like radicalized comedy or something. It doesn't take a backward step, but it's in a very digestible form.
Well, they say the truth is often spoken in jest.
Well, Oscar Wilde said, if you're going to tell the truths, make them laugh or they'll kill you. So yeah, that's really cool. So Steve also produces the music with me, and that's really cool. That guy works with Briggs. So, and then I've got that's on the June 2nd at Cherry Bar is that gig, and we've got Figures who've just released a great new single and Notice of Eviction playing with us. Yeah, they're doing really well. And then Super Heist goes on tour through June. We're here on the 16th, and then we've got other gigs around the country. We're playing Brisbane, Newcastle, Sydney, Adelaide, Mornington, and we're trying to get a Wonthaggi gig in there. Wonthaggi, why not? And then Overreactor just launched our new single on Friday, which is called Backbone from our new album Cocaine Headdress, which we spent 5 years on. And I've never in my life taken that long to make anything. Yeah. And I went through a massive process doing that. So we're going to be touring again in July or August, it looks like, and we're thinking of going out with a certain band that I can't really talk about at the moment. But yeah, so but then also Full Scale, which I think is probably still to this day the biggest band I've ever been in. And I was only looking, if you look at the stats, like Full Scale has more hits on Spotify, which, let me put it this way, like Super Heist, Mammal, Full Scale, and Overreactor were all pre-Spotify. I started before that.
Yeah.
Full Scale is that far ahead on Spotify hits. So there's nothing new coming. Full Scale is a band that matters to people and still does. And me and Jimmy have been writing. He's been flying over and we've been writing together. And he's in the studio now working on the next record, which is coming along very well. It's called Icelandic Justice at the moment. And we're looking at we are going to release it in 2018. We'll have a tour. And on that tour, we're going to play Black and White Arrows in full, which you'll see songs like Crush, Story You Tell Your Children, played for the first time in, it must be like 15 years. Wow. So we're developing that. So I've got this 4-pronged attack on the industry at the moment, and I'm trying to, industry, but I am trying to give people the options. But it also suits me because I love working with everybody. But what's interesting for anyone listening out there that's doing the music thing is that really when you break it down, the creative side of things is me and DW, me and Corey in Overreactor, me and Steve in the solo thing, and me and Jimmy in Full Scale. So as I've evolved in my career, I've become, within my creative process, less democratic or less wide, far-reaching, and I've moved into partnerships. Yeah. And I find it gives a great balance to what you're doing, and I find it very successful as I go forward. So
I think it's important to be able to it's great to have control over things, but when you can find what your strengths are, play to those, and let go of certain things, and allow other people to come in and to take up the slack on certain areas that you're not, because I'm saying we are coming in more into a cooperative paradigm than a competitive one. I really feel that, man. So I think the more we can do that.
Uber.
Well, yeah.
Airbnb. Whether it's good or bad, it's literally about, some people would argue it's about people having to share their resources because capitalism can't give them enough. We could look at it two ways. I tend to see it as a good thing, like if we're gonna be together in it, we may as well be together and drive around together and stay in each other's houses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
And it's all there. You can just give it 5 stars, 2 stars, 1 star.
Exactly. And look at all that.
So yeah.
Right, mate.
Is that it?
We're off.
I was actually just starting to think I need to go to the toilet. Good on you, Jack.
Thanks for coming down.
Can I say, if anyone's looking for someone to connect with and just work with, it's great that Jack did this, but this sort of thing doesn't happen in a vacuum, and I wanted to thank Jack for having me.
Pleasure,
out there
man.
To internet land, because Jack's a real champion. That's the word. He's a champion. He's someone who's ready to deliver when he needs to deliver, but also supports those that may and actually bolsters and builds people and makes them better than they are, because you are a really great mastering engineer, which is something you've worked really hard on. But also I just think you're someone who's searching for the answers and someone who wants to elevate those around them, and I really respect that about you, mate.
Thanks, bro.
And I wanted to say it live on the internet.
Thank you. Appreciate that, great talk. All right, buddy.
Pleasure.
All the best. Thanks for coming down. Thank you for you guys coming down tonight as well. So we're out of here. So anyway, thanks everyone coming down today, and we'll leave you as always by saying, please be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves. Love you, fuckers. See ya.
Why are people so unkind?
See you guys. And that, my friend, is the motherfucking podcast.
That was good, man.